Hebrews chapter 11 is the faith chapter of the Bible. There's only 40 verses, but in those 40 verses, there's a list of over 20 men and women of faith. And after he gives all of that, in the very next verse, which is now chapter 12, the writer says this: "Therefore, since we're surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to this life of faith," meaning all of those men and women that have just been singled out as being people of faith, since we're surrounded by so many people, since we're not in this alone, he gives us some advice. Let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. The Bible says life is a race. It's like a race. Now, I don't mean a little sprint. I'm talking a super duper marathon and more. But it's been my experience that most people do not finish the race of life well. We get discouraged. We get distracted. We get hurt. Our feelings hurt. We start to sit on the sidelines, and very few people actually make it to the end of their life finishing their race well. We start things we never finish. We have a lot of things that are now, they remain unfinished. We start something over here, then we start something over there, and we get tired, we get bored, we get distracted, and we move on to something else. And through this whole process, we get discouraged. That's the word today, discouraged. And if you've ever been discouraged about any issue, today's your lucky day, because we're going to see how you can finish the race and not get discouraged. 4 things that the writer of Hebrews suggests to us, and I think it's going to be good advice. It's practical advice. Number 1, if you want to finish your race well, remove some of the distractions. Remove all the distractions if you can. He says, let us strip off every weight that slows us down and the sin that so easily trips us up. There are things you're carrying right now that's heavy. And it's no wonder you can't run very fast because they're holding you down. And then there's that sin that so easily trips us up. And you say, well, what is that? Well, I don't know. Because I'm of the group that says it changes for every person. We're all unique. We're all different. For some people it might be food. For some people it might be porn. For other people, it might be money or arrogance or pride. You see, I don't know what it is for you. I know what I struggle with. There are some things I really struggle with, and there's some things that just don't bother me at all. I don't struggle with them at all. But you have yours, I have mine. And the writer says, we understand what he's saying. Get the weight off of you. Figure out what it is that's holding you back out of your own nature so you can run. Now, God created you unique, which means you get a unique race. My race is my race. Your race will be your race. We're all headed for the same finish line, but we have different ways of getting there. The problem is that people want you to run their race sometimes. And as you go through life, people keep putting expectations on you. Your parents put expectations on you when you were growing up, how you are supposed to live and how you're supposed to be. Your peers today, they put expectations on you. The people at work, at play, well-meaning people put expectations on all of us, and they can actually become a weight because they distract us. Because I can only run my race. I can't run your race. And you can't tell me how to run my race because it's going to be a very personal thing. Paul simply says the key to finishing a good race is to simplify. Get rid of the baggage you're carrying. Remove some of them diversions. Eliminate the distractions, the time wasters in your life that keep you from doing what you really, truly want to do. Well, you say, well, what could distract me? What could keep me from my life mission? Well, number one, trying to be like somebody else. We talked before about wealth. I mean, nothing wrong with money, but, it can become your master rather than as your servant. Tons of bad habits can keep your race at a standstill. Wrong kind of friends. Television, cell phones, computers, video games. It doesn't have to be a bad thing to hold you down. A lot of good things in life will distract you from the race you need to be running. And one of the biggest distractions, I think, is our past. A lot of people are really loaded down with guilt. They've done things wrong in the past and they just can't get rid of it. And another one we've always talked about a lot is resentment. A lot of people just can't let go of what somebody did to them 30 years ago. And you're not bothering them. You're only ruining your life as you constantly remember it. But I will promise you this, whether you're dealing with guilt or whether you're dealing with a resentment, it's like running with trash bags, heavy concrete-filled trash bags. And it's no wonder you're discouraged because you can't run a race carrying that kind of stuff. Now listen, if you continue to hold on to hurts from the past, and if you refuse to forgive what somebody has done to you in the past, or if you keep beating yourself up because of a stupid thing you did in the past, you are not going to run your race well. Paul, the apostle, he had all sorts of regrets. He had a lot to regret. Before he became a believer, he was a religious terrorist. He went around the countryside killing Christians. And so he had a lot to regret. He had a lot of mistakes in his past. But listen to what he says in Philippians. He said, forgetting the past and looking forward to what lies ahead, I strain to reach the end of the race. He's saying, I'm not going to let the things of the past, I know, I've asked forgiveness, but I'm not going to let them keep me from looking to the finish line and finishing the race. Does that make sense? If you really want to run a good race of life, you really do want to finish well, you got to put the energy onto the future, what's left for you, not the past where you've already been. Now, number two, kind of a short point, remember the reward. You cannot run your race if you don't know where the finish line is. You cannot run your race if you don't want to get to the finish line with all of your heart and energy. I don't know about you, but every day I have to remind myself why we do what we do. Because if I don't remind myself why we do what we do, I will turn around one day thinking, why even bother? Why even make the effort? They'll never change, or this world will never change. Now, if you don't know why you're a believer, you won't be a believer much longer. You need to know what the finish line means. Oh, you might come to church every once in a while, but you're not going to be running your race well if you don't know why you're doing it. Paul says it this way, so run your race to win. To win the contest, you must deny yourselves many things that would keep you from doing your best. An athlete goes to all this trouble just to win a blue ribbon or a silver cup, but we do it for a heavenly reward that never disappears. So I run straight to the goal with purpose in every step. There are a lot of times in life when the only hope, the only strength that's big enough to help you through the next day is knowing that God has a reward for you. And it is not selfish at all or self-centered to eagerly long for the rewards that God has for you. Hebrews 6 in the Message translation says this: don't drag your feet. Be like those who stay in the course with committed faith and then get everything promised to them. Now, number 3, resist discouragement. Number 1, remove the distractions. Number 2, remember the reward at the finish line. And then number 3, resist discouragement. Listen, there are a ton of things that discourage all of us. Our health, our finances, our marriage perhaps, or our children. Just the very idea of hatred in the world and the wars and rumors of wars that you're hearing every day from the news. But I got to say this: discouragement is a choice. It's not an automatic emotion. Nobody's holding a gun to your head saying you have to be discouraged today. It's your decision. It's a choice. And if you are feeling down, if you feel like quitting, it's because you have chosen to think discouraging thoughts. D.L. Moody, he was a famous pastor about 100 years ago. He once said, "I have never known God to use a discouraged person." Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but the more I think about it, I think it probably is true. Because if you're discouraged, you're not looking through the eyes of faith. You're looking through your own eyes, and you're looking at what's wrong rather than what could be. Check this verse. Let us not get tired of doing what is right, for after a while we'll reap a harvest of blessings if we don't get discouraged and give up. Anybody ever get tired of doing the right thing? I do. You know why we get tired doing the right thing? Because it's easier to do the wrong thing. If it was hard to do the wrong thing, nobody in this world would do the wrong thing. They do the wrong thing because it's the easiest thing to do. It's so much easier to lie than tell the truth. It's so much easier to be selfish than unselfish. It's always harder to do the right thing. That's why it takes more energy. That's why it takes more effort. And that's why we get tired of doing the right thing. But the Bible still says resist discouragement. Don't give in without a fight. There's a harvest of blessings to come. I mean, when you take one little seed of corn and plant it, you get tons and tons of seeds in return. And that's the way it is with the blessing. You plant a little blessing, you get big returns on that blessing. Anything you do in life that's worth anything takes energy, effort, endurance. Nothing's easy. It really isn't. But don't give up. Someone said, great people are just ordinary people with extraordinary amount of determination. I understand it's tough. I am there with you. And there's no beating around the bush on this. Life is hard. This is not heaven, and so if you're expecting this to feel like heaven, you're in the wrong place. Heaven's a little bit further down the road. If you go through life and you're discouraged, and you're tired, and you begin to doubt yourself, and pretty soon you start to doubt God, and you start thinking things like, maybe this serving God, maybe this going to church is not what it's all cracked up to be. What do you do when you get some discouragement? Psalms 94 says, Lord, when doubts fill my mind, when my heart is in turmoil, quiet me and give me renewed hope and cheer. I'll give you Turner's paraphrase. It says two things. Number one, it says, quiet me. And sometimes one of the best things you can do is just sit down and shut up. I mean that in the nicest of all ways. We need to be quiet. We're not quiet people. Some of us don't even like quiet. Quietness scares us. Let me ask you a question. Are you ever awake and quiet? Because some of you, I know, I live with one. Some of you have to have noise in the background for everything. I mean, the moment you wake up, the radio goes on. Or the TV comes on. You're not even watching it. You're just watching this fireplace and this dog in front of the fireplace all day long. I get so tired of that. Never mind. Or you turn on your cell phone. You're heading to the shower. You got nothing on except your cell phone. And then you prop it up over in the commode while you're taking a shower. Psalms 94, David says, quiet me. Quiet me. When was the last time you went in your backyard and sat down? On a chair, of course. And for 10 minutes, you did nothing. It's kind of like, God, is there anything you want to tell me? I don't want you to pray. I don't want you to read your Bible. Just want you to sit there and just see if any still small voices might make some contact with you. Some of you probably have never done that. Some of you maybe did it once or twice, but you haven't done it for a long time. It's one of the great things to do if you're depressed and discouraged. It is to actually get alone and just sort of work it through. Try to even keep some of the clutter in your brain out of it. Just see what happens. Now, the other thing, though, it says, give me renewed hope and cheer. You get that by focusing on God. You get that by opening up your Bible and reading and the prayer to God. And there's some things you remember. 3 of them. It's in your bulletin, I think. You remember God's goodness to you in the past. Because this thing about the goodness of God is so true. He has already brought you through some of the worst situations of life, and we tend to forget that. And then you remember God's presence with you right now. And then you remember God's promise for you in the future. You know, we had Dave's graveside yesterday, and we had 4 people speak. And every single one of them, it was not planned, but every single one of them focused on the promise of God. When you focus on what God has promised you, when you focus on His presence right now and His goodness to you in the past, you're not going to get but so discouraged. Number 4, then finals. Renew myself daily. If you're going to stay in it for the long haul, and I'm talking about this race of life, you're going to run your entire life. I'm questioning whether you're going to run it well or poorly. Okay? We will all finish the race. But you're going to have to take care of yourself physically and spiritually. And we don't emphasize that enough, I don't think. Take care of yourself physically. I love the Living Bible translation. I can understand it. David says it's senseless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, fearing you will starve to death. For God wants His loved ones to get their proper rest. Fatigue makes cowards of all of us, said Vince Lombardi. And if you're discouraged, you're probably wore out. You're exhausted from things you're doing, maybe even good things that you're doing. A few years ago, we had a small group that focused on exercise and proper diet. And, I think those things need to come back into church, and we need to talk about some of these, things and diets and exercise. Because, 30 years ago, I could eat anything I wanted. I could drink anything I wanted to drink. But now, I've learned that if I don't eat the right things today, or subtitled, If I Choose to Eat Some of the Things That I Didn't really want to eat, but to taste so delicious like Krispy Kremes, I know what I'm going to feel like tomorrow. And I'm serious. What my choices today, I see them tomorrow. And if I keep doing these choices for week after week, I shorten my entire life. And so the Bible's pretty clear here. You know, you got to take care of yourself physically. Maybe you haven't been to a doctor. Well, make an appointment. And then he also says to take care of yourself physically or spiritually. I like this is from Paul. He says, this is why we never give up. Our physical body is becoming older and weaker. Anybody can identify with that verse? Yeah, you and me both. But check this part of it. But our spirit inside of us is made brand new every day. And the way you make it brand new is simply put God back in your life Monday through Saturday. God's not through with you, and your race is not over. And the truth of it is, it does not matter how you started your race. You might have fell down getting off of the starting gate, and it doesn't really matter if you messed up your race along the way. What really matters is, are you going to finish your race well? What are you going to do from here on? Are you really going to serve God? Are you really going to love Him and His children? Are you really going to obey those things that He actually has said? It's not how you start the race, but it is indeed how you finish it. And you're never a failure until you refuse to get up. My prayer is that at the end of your life, you can say what the Apostle Paul said at the end of his. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Stand as we share a final song with you this morning.